Welcome to another episode of the Most Serious Podcast. Today I'm joined by Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sitting on an afternoon now and thinking of recording an episode on the Most Serious Podcast. What made you do this?
I'm a very serious person, so that's really what I'm all about. No,
So we can read from your t-shirt, right?
exactly. This is what we're all about here. Never forget. But yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to come and um, have a convo about comedy, about laughter, about humor, which seems like the epitome of seriousness.
Do you find yourself naturally humorous person? I don't know even if I've defined that question clearly for it to have a definite answer, but like, do you always find interest in comedy in general more than other people, or is it something that you recently acquired a taste in probably last 5 years, 7 years?
No, I've always loved comedy. I'm the youngest of six kids, and at the dinner table, when you were the youngest of six kids, my oldest brother was 15 years older than me, and everyone kind of falls in line thereafter, 2 to 3 years apart thereafter. And um, I mean, there would be moments where, as a young kid, 5 years old or whatever, I'd want to say something or speak, and they would be like, they would stop me right away. They'd be like, Kevin, you're going too much on a tangent, or like you're like, this is not valuable enough. So like it was also like, you got your stripes at that table, but my earliest memories were not talking at that table, obviously trying to talk, but not having earned the right yet to add value, but um was laughing. I mean, that dinner table I grew up in was just so much laughter and so much poking at each other and just really giving everyone, a hard time, or coming up with bits, or coming up with ongoing shticks that we would do. I mean, our family even had like, you know, these like catchphrases that we gave to each other as if we were like on our own show. I mean, and no one knew just but each other, but it really did feel like we were living in our own world, and we were a very close-knit family growing up, uh and I really think that's where humor started. And again, having older brothers and sisters, I got so exposed to, you know, really great comedians that otherwise it would, if I had to find them on my own, probably would have taken me more time. But I remember as a family, and I mean me and my brothers and sisters, my parents would be asleep, but we would watch SNL religiously, Saturday Night Live, 11:30 p.m. I think it wasn't until 2017 where it was broadcasted nationally at that same time, but like, yeah, 11:30 p.m. It was on.
Like a
We were
tradition.
watching it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a tradition, and it was like a tradition and I got to enjoy comedy while my brothers were in their late teens and 20s. I got to enjoy that as someone who was like in the single digits still. So I got exposed just so early to comedy. I remember I went and saw the movie Dirty Work as like a 8-year old or something, which if your audience looks that up, that's a crazy movie to take an 8-year old to in theaters. Um, but yeah, it was just like so much exposure, so fun, and it was just a natural thing in our family of just humor, appreciating humor, movies, shows, but more importantly, just making each other laugh. And I just have so many memories of just so much exposure to laughter. And I would just laugh at anything my family said, anything my brother said to me. I was just so happy to be in the room, and just be able to take it all in.
That's a very sweet story. I think that stems from, that's such a that's such a well put together, narrative. Uh, I'm so glad that it's that case for you. But what I want to ask you, like in terms of comedy and humor in general, is that what truly is comedy? How do you define it? Because there's one quote that I read somewhere which says that comedy is tragedy plus time, or
Yeah.
tragedy over time. But across your experience, with dealing with so many comedians, they would have their own interpretations of what comedy is. How do you actually define humor? What makes something funny or not? What's your take? Like, what's your amalgamation of that understanding, and how would you define it?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that quote too. And that's, I think, in relation to, comedy equals tragedy plus time. I mean, like that's when you're kind of able to give a tragedy space and then use humor as a way to release that tension. And actually, I I don't think you can necessarily define comedy. I think it's very silly to define comedy and try to define comedy because there's so many types of comedians and humor styles, and to say one thing is funny and another thing is not funny is um, is kind of being like the arbiter of humor, which doesn't exist. That's like a
Yeah.
gift that we're all given, is this gift of laughter and our ability to laugh at stuff. And so for someone to say you're not supposed to laugh at that, that's not what humor is. That's not what comedy is. That's a crazy thing to say. So first off, you can't define comedy, but what you can do is appreciate all different types of comedy. There's sketch comedy, there's improv comedy, there's stand-up comedy, there's scripted comedy. So there's all different ways uh, uh, to skin the cat, so to speak. So that's kind of what I'll say. But what I will say is I think comedy that is really great. Uh, and I'm saying this off the top of my head because I just said it to someone because I saw the movie Friendship with Tim Robinson. And comedy to me is like tension buildup, and it's the ability to build a lot of tension and then release that tension. And
Yeah.
that's like he's so good at that. And what he is able to do where he's like I was in the movie theater like squirming in my seat like what is happening, and you hear like the groans and the moans from the audience members because they're like like what is it, oh my gosh. And so that tension that he builds up just to release it like air out of a balloon, and it's the hardest that, and then suddenly you're tense for like 7 minutes and then you're laughing uncontrollably for 3 minutes. Like I remember watching that movie and I was laughing well into the next scene, like not even relevant to like what my laughter was, but I was still thinking about it. My body was feeling it. So I think that there's a lot of different formulas that you can say, tragedy plus time, tension, uh, minus or plus release or minus release, whatever the equation is. I was terrible at math, but yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and I think what's been really cool for me is like I told you, I got exposed to so much comedy, and then I kept that love going, and trying to make other people laugh just with my surroundings, and knowing when's a good time to make a joke or when's taking a chance and making a joke. So you develop your own humor style in comedy style that again is very specific to you and how you're engaging with the person in front of you, or the people in front of you if it's a larger audience. But when I started to in addition to performing and I started to produce comedy, I was be able to have like the first shows that I was doing as a comedy producer. It was me as the host, and then I got to have five comedians on, and the comedians were men and women. They were all different types of sexualities. They had all different types of ethnic backgrounds, and you just kind of got to see comedy is very personal, I think, as well. And that's what great comedy is. You're able to speak from your own experience, and you're able to connect with an audience member or somebody. If it's just a you and me talking, we're able to connect on something that I'm sharing about myself that you can go, I've had that experience too.
Yeah.
And so I got to see and work with all of these different types of comedians. And that was my goal when I first started producing comedy shows, I said I do not really want to have repeat comedians, and it's very rare for me to do so. And even if the audience won't like really know the difference, I want to challenge myself to opening myself up to as many perspectives as I can. And I think actually that's a big thing of comedy. It's a lot about perspectives and well rounding as an audience member your perspectives to understand it. So that is such a complicated answer, but yeah, the answer is you know there is no finite answer of like what is comedy, what makes good comedy or good humor. Like it's kind of like a recipe, right? Everyone's got their own take on a recipe of what works for the people that they're serving the food to, and it doesn't make one recipe. Obviously, there's Michelin star chefs, but then there's also that person. That Michelin star chef could be the equivalent of like a Netflix comic, absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. But then there's your Nona, so to speak. That's like the Italian grandmother that makes the best pasta sauce you've ever had in your life. And they don't run a restaurant, but that might be your friend. That's your coworker at work. That's the funniest person that you've ever met. Some of the people that are the funniest people in my lives aren't even comedians. They are regular, workers. That's not their full-time job, but they make me laugh so unbelievably hard. And so, yeah, I think it's just a whole mishmash, and it's about you know, whatever your flavor is.
It's very interesting that you mentioned, how relatability is kind of like a big part of when things are termed as comedic, or when you're talking about humor. Especially I feel in the stand up format, the more people find the show or the conversation to be more relatable to them, they feel more engaged, or maybe the laughs really land at the jokes. What I find to be very interesting in this whole space is that observation plays a very big role here. So a very good comedian probably is just sitting and observing a lot of human behaviors across the spectrum, and there are very simple things that they just quote, and you on the back of your head always think that knew it, but probably never said it out aloud. And when you have a combined social reaction of, oh shit, everyone does it.
Well, that's the best whenever I'm trying a joke out and I am trying out something that is like, say, observational, um, and you haven't even gotten to the punchline yet, but you just like, when you're doing a joke, it's a setup and a punchline. And the setup is usually, it's going to be it's like you really connecting with the audience when the setup is like, you know, it's connecting with people because you're basically just setting the table and be like, hey, this feeling that I have, like this is an experience that I have, and then you on the other end of it are going, holy crap, that's also something that I feel
Yeah.
too. And you laugh because you're recognizing and connecting with that person just from their setup, just from a benign, setup that is just like, hey, this thing that I experienced, this happened to me and this is the thing. And then you hear people, connect with that through a laugh before the laugh is even meant to be there. Like when as a comedian, you're writing jokes, and it's actually funny. I had this great comedian, Joe Larson, told me, when it, when you're writing a joke, a lot of the times you'll go, oh man, they're gonna love this part. Like they're gonna like you already like hear the laughter in your head, and you're like, bravo, you've done it. And then you tell the joke, and that part's not the part that gets the laugh, and it might even but he was like, those almost always when you expect the laugh, like this is gonna kill, it never kills. And I always thought that was funny. Um, but in that sense, it's like, yeah, the thing that you least expect to be funny because you're just speaking kind of truth, can sometimes really hit home with people, and that's the part that they laugh at. And so, that's what comedians, they don't get the joke right on the first try almost ever. That's why they work really hard to refine and tweak and move a word here, and how do I connect with the audience fast enough, because when I connect with you, you're suddenly sitting on your seat. a little bit more. So that's why you want to really keep working out material because one word could change how you're connecting to the audience. Um, but yeah, that phrase observational humor is um, I think comics are just curious. What makes a great
Hmm.
comedian is is boundless curiosity. Um, you're looking at something and going, "Ha, I wonder how that works," or "I wonder who invented that," or "I wonder what that originally was from," or "I wonder why this works the way that it works. Let me kind of ask more questions and dive deeper into it." And so, where you might be like connect with that at a surface level, a comedian has this boundless amount of curiosity where you're at the top of the hole and they're all the way down the rabbit hole and they have worked through all the different ways that like you can think about it, and that's really it. Like when you have a great premise or a joke that like got a little bit of a laugh, sometimes that's actually all you need to be like, I think I got something here. I heard someone laughing there. Let me try to come up with like two, three, four more tags uh, that I could add to that or rewrite that because that's getting some laughs. And
Hmm.
so that's it. Like once you hear that little piece of reaction, you're like, well, I got to go deeper down that rabbit hole because I might have just struck gold. I got to keep seeing what's at the bottom of this thing.
Yeah, it requires, I think does require deep thought. I feel because you have to, or maybe not deep thought is the right term, but the distillation of whatever you observe. Because I mean, a normal person like me probably is always distracted about something, right? I'm either at work, I'm doing something, and I might find something funny, I might observe something, but probably I don't make notes of them or
Hmm.
try to make a set from them. But whenever some comic will say something in a stand up, then I'll instantly remember and I'll laugh.
Yeah.
So probably it does require, outside of all these distractions, for a comic to really just simplify those observations into something coherent, which probably just might not even be humorous, as you said, right? And it might strike home with someone and make a laugh.
I mean, I think, probably 2,000 plus notes in my notes app with that in my stand-up folder of just ideas and jokes and something that made me laugh. And I think it's almost like I look at it as like, I think I have a disease. I think I have a disease where I can't let it go. Like, I think that like you're given bouts of inspiration constantly as a comedian. Like when you're already dialed in, you can't just kind of let a moment go. Like maybe you might have laughed like made your friends laugh as like a personal story you're telling, and it's really hard as a comedian to just be like, ah, that's over. It's like, let me write that down. Like let me write down what
Yeah.
made them laugh, what was that moment, and it's like what is that thing? And it's like like I know so many comedians that carry a book in their back of their pocket, or and it's not like they're writing, it's a small book, it's not like a book where they're writing their full set out. They're writing, little parts of things that made them laugh. It might be a word, it might be a phrase, it might be a point in history. I don't know what it is, but it's like, man, there's something about that that's interesting and funny. I got to dive deeper into that. And yeah, I say to my wife all the time, I'm like, yeah, this really does feel like a disease that I have that I can't just like let it go. I have to write it down. I have to try to work it out later. Like I have to see if this is a seed of anything. Um, and you got to try it out. You got to go, and that's another thing about being a comedian. You might think it's funny, um, but it's not to a group of people that don't know who you are, or you're not doing comedy. You're maybe taking too long to get to the punchline or a laugh. Like it's maybe a little bit too self-serving. So, then you start to get into the details. And like when I did comedy for the first time, when I did stand-up, I was going off of material that I was like, this is gonna kill. Like, this is awesome. And then you do it and you get no laughs, and you're like, well, that's at least good to know. That's good to know that, like, I just did 5 minutes, and 4 minutes and 50 seconds of it sucked. Um, but then you're like, wait a second, I did get 10 seconds of laughter. Let me take that and let me build off of that. So it's not all for nothing. And I think people can really get discouraged when 98% of your material is crap, according to an audience. Um, and so you also have to know when to try it in front of multiple audiences because not every audience is correct. Um, Mark Normand has a really fantastic show that I went to a screening of it in New York, but it was called Page to Stage, and it's about him having an idea of a joke and going. You get to watch him go comedy club to comedy club, um, and he's trying the joke at multiple comedy clubs in front of multiple audiences, and he's seeing what parts worked there, what parts killed in certain audience, what parts absolutely dead. So I think that's another component as well, is like you have to really be resilient in trying stuff out outside of like it's a process. It's like idea, experimentation, iteration, final product. And I think that's, as someone that started their career in the software business, I started my career at a company called Splash. And when I first got there, I was doing anything they needed. It was like customer service, sales, product, whatever it was. But I got to see a product being built from scratch and kind of beta testing it with different users. And, as I got deeper into comedy, I was like, man, this is not really much different than what
Then a new
I'm doing
product.
at work.
Yeah.
And I think that like, you know, what's the common through line? What's the common denominator? It's the ability to be resilient through failure.
Hmm. What happens to writing and these, scripting of maybe comedy skits slash sketches in the world of AI, and when everyone has access to probably, prompt engineer LLM to carve out something which, is, can you like, is there a formula to like really standardize comedy? Can AI achieve that? And really what happens to comics and the way they write? Because I think a large degree of things might get standardized if, people start choosing to feed off that output.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's still something that's like really unfolding. And first off, I do want to say you said the word skit, which is probably my biggest pet peeve. And I need to educate your audience on the difference between a set, a skit, and a sketch.
Please do. Even I would want to know.
It's something that drives comedians crazy when, especially if you're a stand-up comic and you're like, do you skit? Let's hear you skit. Come on, let's hear it. It's like that is not at all what it's
That
referred to
must be
as.
so embarrassing to for that.
It's it is like it is like the immediate way for a comic to just be like, oh God, okay, I know. So like when someone a set is a stand-up set. That is what a set is called when a comic goes on and does a stand-up comedy. They're telling jokes. That is their set. That is their act, and that is what the stand-up does. Now, when someone is doing a skit, it's closer to a sketch, and it's closer to a scripted thing where you're actually like scripting. You have, it's more of a sketch comedy format, and it's something that's a bit more like theatrical in that setting with more people.
With
So I think
props, everything. Yeah.
hey, props, maybe it doesn't have to be. It could be. I mean, again, it goes into like it's more of a theater type thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's closer to a sketch than it is a set. But whenever people refer to stand up as a skit, um, it's tough. It's very tough. But to answer your question, um, oh yeah, like AI. First off, as long as AI keeps being so nice to us and being like, that's a great joke, man, really
You
got
are
us, Kevin.
funny.
Like I think that's also a very funny thing is that AI is creating delusional human beings at times
Mm.
because they're like, man, great idea. And it's like, no, it wasn't. Like that was nothing. Like that was crap. So, um, also if your
I
audience has a
find this
like,
very funny. I find this piece very funny. That whenever someone is just like bluntly honest about some feedback, no, that thing is pristine and it has stood the test of time. Like, what is a good insult or something like people, have had so many comedic reactions. When you just give blatant feedback, and sometimes it ends up being so funny. But people are not used to that.
yeah, I mean, also, but like, even if you're a comic and they say something and they're like, "Hey, good joke," but they're being very sarcastic. It's like that's also a really good a really good insult that stings so hard. Like someone being like, "I'm funny. Here's my thing. I'm in the audience," and it's like, "Oh, that was a good one. Jeez," and like look away. Um, but yeah, I think that's another thing. Like AI is also until. I don't think it's really a threat because right now, and for a number of reasons, one, what I just said, AI is so complementary towards all of your ideas and the things that you're doing, uh, and it's so like it's just so not the way humans interact. It might be like the way like your mother might react to you telling them like a joke if your mother is like a super supportive mother and they're like, man, that's great. So I think that's one of the components. I think another thing is like, can AI tell a joke that's going to make you laugh? Sure, they can write something and maybe that's like structurally good. And, I'm sure these LLMs are, you know, being educated. Well, first off, I don't think any LLM yet has been educated on like really how to write a joke, but they know the ideas because they're taking it from books and they're taking on like how to write a joke. You have a setup, you have a punchline, and you have tags and all these different stuff. Um, but when you are brought out in front of an audience, and you have to deliver that joke and you have to feel the room out and you have to like understand like this is my stage and these are the walls that are around me and these are the people that are around me. Okay, now tell the joke. And the delivery of that joke and your pauses and your breaths and your cadence, like what goes into actually delivering something excellent and delivering a set or your act. Your set isn't just a line of jokes. It's not, all right, I got 30 jokes in my set. You might have that, but the way I look at it is like, sure, you might have a set and this is your set. These are the jokes you're going to tell. But then when it becomes your act is when you've put your soul into it. You've put your mannerisms into it. You've put your a lot of the times the biggest misconception is that um, people think that the guy or the girl that is on stage is the exact same person that they are off stage and that they're kind of just telling
Mm.
their life story up there. The magic trick is that it's an act. They are performing. They are doing a character of themselves. They're doing a character that they've invented. It's not necessarily who they are. It might be baked in reality of who that person is, but it's not that person. So, that's a whole nother component. They say it takes like 10 years to
Mhm.
really find your voice in comedy and find your voice as a stand-up. And that comes from the fact of like, you know, I always say, like, I think Shane Gillis right now, if you're familiar with him, he's absolutely hilarious. He's one of the biggest comics in the world. He's super, super funny. And what I actually find him to be so funny is his jokes are so good and clean and great. What kills me is his pauses, his faces, the way he holds the mic, the way that he laughs. It's all of the kind of 1 second, 2 second, 3 second intervals that are in between his jokes that allow the audience to laugh at those things. And like AI is never going to be able to do that. Like how on earth could they do it? Like maybe like you have a Neuralink chip in your brain and you turn into someone else. Like I don't know. I don't think that they're focused on that technology right now. It's kind of a huge waste of money if they are.
Not far away, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like it's pretty low on the totem pole. But yeah, so that's another reason why I think like, yeah, you can work with AI to workshop a joke or, clean it up. But you have to go and try it. You have to go and do it in front of people. You can come up with a great idea, but until you put it out in the world, and see, it's like a customer, like any business that you run, you might think you have a great idea. It's like, okay, go acquire some customers. Like, is AI going to take over how we are able to create things and invent things? Like, no, that's what makes us human, the way our human nature reacts to stuff and has genuine emotion and connects with it. It's not too different than starting or launching a product. It's like you can have great ideas. I have 100 great business ideas, but execution is everything.
Fair point. I also feel that, when you're also in this space of comedy and humor, like there's so much power in the true simplicity and your own signature of the way that you're doing it. And you might borrow an AI to get some inspiration or maybe craft something that you've already made. But unless and until you don't have that, you don't have your signature print on it completely, if you've not bought into what you're truly saying, is I feel that makes a conversation also very empty. Whenever you're like the conversations that you enjoy, mostly you're there, you're listening, and you are what you're saying also is what you truly believe. And a script can only go so far, is what I feel, because the true comics or the way they deliver, or maybe that's a good act that they can put on, it really feels like it's their story and it's something, that's something that happened to them.
Yeah, I think also something you said reminded me, it's like I think it's called the illusion of transparency. Like when you are very open with the audience that something's not going well, it gets a huge laugh. It has a
Hmm.
crazy emotional response. So some of the biggest laughs I've ever had, it's when I recognize that I'm bombing, you know? It's when like I have a set that I did where I wrote the set. I wrote it in pages, every word. It was one of the first comedy sets that I ever did. And I wrote word for word. I scripted it. I worked through it. And then I get on stage and I'm doing this act out where I check for things in my pockets, but I have my microphone in my hand and I'm checking things. And the microphone cord falls out and I'm like, hello, and everyone's like, what is happening right now? And I'm like, and then I put the microphone back and I go, oh, is this working? Okay. And then I go try to go back into the joke. I lose my place completely. The joke, no one laughs at what I think is that aha punchline. And then I just turned to the audience and I don't know where it came from. This is just very human nature. I turn to the audience and I go, well, blew that joke. And it's the hardest by far that anyone laughs at anything that I say. And and it was the funniest thing that I did that night. And that was just a organic thing that happened.
Yeah.
And now I don't think I ever would repeat that. You're not going to like start bombing on purpose for the sake of doing it. Like
वैसे
that's
wouldn't
really, yeah, exactly. That's just like where that's also why live comedy is so fun. It's like that is where those mistakes happen, where it's like SNL is a great example. It's live. So when a character breaks and laughs, the audience loves it, Like when the character can't contain themselves and they laugh super hard, it lets the audience be like, oh, great. Like that's human nature. Like they're having fun. And that's sometimes where like, I mean, there you can go on YouTube right now and just type in like, you know, characters breaking, and how unbelievably funny it is to see how much fun they're having, but also just to see how human they are. And I think that that's like, it goes back to what I have said countless times on this is like, it's so much about human connection and connecting with your audience. And like, AI is artificial intelligence. So it's like, it's invented, it's made up, it's intelligence that's crafted from other things, and then what makes you human is your actual intelligence, and humor is the recognition of that intelligence. And that is what I think, there's a study out there that is what is happening when you laugh, is that you're recognizing the humor or the intelligence. You're going to the comedian, excuse me, when you laugh and you're saying, I get I'm on the same page as you, and I'm going to have a visceral reaction that is a noise, that is a laugh, and it's the recognition of that intelligence of going, you told this joke, only a few people are going to get it, but I got it, and I'm laughing, and that's the exchange that we just gave each other.
Hmm. So, Kevin, like, what makes you still drive on this mission? Because I know you've had a career in software sales, and now you've been doing the Laugh Events Club. And what makes you still like get inspired or motivated? That because I'm assuming this requires a lot of patience, and this does require a lot of carefully tending to your set and your writing, and phases of where you're not getting that natural humor or that string of good performances. So, what is it outside of just loving humor and comedy, or your maybe curiosity in humor? What else drives you more?
Yeah. I mean, so there's two things that I do. I am a comic, and that's like something that I think when it's something that you will never stop chasing, right? It's like there's so many comedians that they've done it for so long, and there's some comics that always work on jokes. There's jokes that they've had for 10, 20, 30 years that they're still trying to tweak and make work, and they didn't get that moment. So like, that's one side of my life, which is this, it's a very fun challenge to say, oh, I'm going to write down this note and I'm going to come up with a joke for it, and I'm going to put that into a set that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a very fun challenge, and I think that that's kind of a very that's one of the things that motivates me, is that like, it's a never-ending challenge, and you look at comedians all over the country, and even the greatest comedians, they will agree with that sentiment, is that a joke really is almost never over. I mean, Lauren Michaels has a great quote about deadlines, and it's about SNL, and he says um, the show doesn't go on because it's ready. The show goes on because it's 11:30. And that's like, they might have more to squeeze out of that.
Yeah.
Uh, but they're like, no, we have a deadline. We have to do it. We have to submit it. So when you have a deadline, you have to lay down a joke, and you have to do it in front of people. You got to go, and it's got to be ready. You got to perform it, and you got to do it. You got to see what it goes. But um, you can always tweak it. You can always change it and iterate on it and keep it going. And I think that that's a very fun component and challenging part. But you know, the thing that is our core business. This is more of me as a personal growth, but our core business is corporate comedy, and so that corporate comedy comes in the form of improv, and it comes in the form of live performances for corporate audiences. So outside of the challenge of being personally funny or being personally delivering good stand-up material, what I actually have really fallen deeper in love with is this idea of working, or this practice of working with corporate audiences and helping them find their 5 to 9 personality during their 9 to 5. That's a phrase that we use all the time. You have your 9 to 5 personality, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's when you work. And then from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., that's really who you are. And a lot of people decide that they can't bring that 5 to 9 personality into their 9 to 5. So that
Hmm.
is my driving force, is that we do these events and then we send a post-event survey out to people. And whether it's a virtual comedy show, virtual corporate comedy show, whether it's an in-person comedy show at someone's office, or our kind of biggest, like, impact event, which is called Laughing and Development, which is applied
L&D.
improv for corporate teams. Yeah. Um, we do this post-event survey and we ask them to tell us what they thought of the event, but more importantly, how did you personally feel? And when we're doing this laughing and development, which is really like team building, professional development, and like making each other laugh, we get to see the craziest responses in a good way. It's like, I was really scared before I got into this. Now I feel invigorated. I was really nervous. Now I feel inspired. This is the best event that we've ever done as a team, and it's unlike anything that we did. I feel more connected to my teammates. I felt like I could be authentically myself. And so, you know, work is a grind, and having a job is a grind. And so when you get that moment where you can like forget about your job for a second, like what a gift companies can give their teams by saying, we care about you. We care about your growth. We care about your well-being. Let's take a minute and just drop everything. Not just your work, not just your clients, not just your Slack, but like let's drop the titles too. Like I'm
Yeah.
not your CEO and you're not an entry-level employee. We're on the same page. And so that is really what has driven me and is really inspiring to me, is to be able to work with people that go into it so unbelievably tense, not knowing what to expect, actually expecting for it to be bad. They're expecting it to be another corporate event, and then they come away with it going, whoa, that was awesome. And so that's like, that is an avenue that I have taken, and it's allowed us to work with. We've worked with we've worked at doing a comedy show because of our virtual audiences. We've done comedy shows for every continent. We've worked with people all over the globe, every continent but Antarctica, but we'll see how that one turns out. um, but we've worked with every single
You
type of
might have a
audience.
very polar audience there, but
There we
see how
go.
that turns out.
There we go. uh But we've worked, I mean, gosh, I think it's hundreds of thousands. We're in that number. We're able to work with that many people. And we're able to work, I mean, our in-person stuff is all across the country of the United States. We're in 30 plus different cities, but our virtual events allow us to connect with so many people that, we had this most amazing comment the other day in our post-event survey that says, like, it was like, my job is the same every single day. Uh, I can't believe I got this opportunity to just drop into this thing and laugh uncontrollably for 30 minutes. Thank you so much. And we get those kind of responses. And how can you not be stoked to go to
Yeah.
work, try
Yep.
to get more people this? And so that's really what drives me. And it all started during the pandemic. That's really where we got into the corporate audiences, because we couldn't do in-person shows anymore for after work audiences. So we got into corporate because that was the only thing that was like kind of around and available. And the things people were writing back to us were like, I'm so depressed being on lockdown, being inside, and
Yeah.
this brought me joy. I can't connect with our teammates anymore because we're not next to each other, and I got to laugh with them. I got to like hang out with my teammates in a context outside of work. So again, I'm always going to be obsessed with comedy, with stand up, with wanting to get better and always get another great joke or 5 minute set to build a longer set. That's always like a personal challenge that I love doing. Um, but the thing that actually is driving me and inspiring me is this ability to really impact people with these 9 to 5 jobs and help them, bring a little 5 to 9 into their 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think that probably when you say it like that, then it kind of makes a lot of sense on why you chose to spend so much time on this mission, and what it really means for you as well. This was superb, Kevin. I didn't realize that we already close to hit the hour mark, but yeah, I mean, any last piece of advice slash any statements that you want to leave with the audience on this episode or on your mission?
Um, Honestly, I think I don't want to say anything that's going to ruin any other nuggets I dropped in here. I think there was a lot of great conversation that we just had, and I'm very grateful to be on the show. And yeah, I'm a nerd about this stuff. I love talking about it. I love exploring it, and I think like
Yeah,
my advice really is like, you know, twofold, but like one is invite laughter into your life, levity. You can live with a certain amount of levity. And, like you said, tragedy plus time, that's one of the formulas for comedy. And there certainly is a time where it's not appropriate to laugh at stuff. And so always be conscious of that, but don't underestimate the power of laughter
yeah,
and the ability, what laughter does. Laughter is a biological response to in your body, and so when you laugh, you have an increase in endorphins. You have a decrease in cortisol, which is the stress hormone. When you laugh with other people, there's a flood of serotonin, and you're feeling more connected to them. So it's not a coincidence that you feel great when you have a good laugh. It's biology, and that's a really great way. And so I always, live your life with levity, invite humor, invite laughter. You don't have to be funny. I think that's kind of a really bizarre thing, people trying to be funny. But if you invite it, if you listen to it, if you welcome it, and if you kind of live a very in that levity, um, you're just gonna have a lot more joy, and things are going to feel looser around you, and you're gonna connect with more people. And again, don't underestimate the power of a laugh.
well, that's our ending note for this episode. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being on the Most Serious podcast. Amazing conversation. I think this revolved a lot around deconstructing what we were talking about before recording the episode as well. So superb. Grateful to have you on the show.
Thanks,
We'll
man. Have a good
chat
one.
again whenever we are interested in a lesson in humor.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.